The crowd roared as blood sprayed across the sand. Kai Mercer wiped the sweat from his brow, his chest heaving with exertion as he stood over his fallen opponent. The Craxian warrior's multiple arms twitched in defeat, mandibles clicking weakly, as the referee drone hovered between them, its synthetic voice cutting through the cacophony of the Hellsand pit. Victory to the Terran, 3 consecutive wins. The spectators, a motley collection of species from across the galactic arm, stomped their various appendages against the metal bleachers. The sound reverberated through the circular arena, a thunderous applause that Kai had grown accustomed to over the past weeks. But he took no pleasure in it. Every fight, every victory was merely a stepping stone to what truly mattered. His sister's freedom. Kai's gaze drifted upward, past the baying crowd to the luxury boxes that ringed the upper level of the Shinnok Station's fighting pit. Behind the polarized glass, the silhouettes of the wealthy and powerful watched with detached interest. Among them would be Grix the pitmaster, who had promised him credits for wins. Credits that would buy Elise's contract from the mining colony on Cygnus 4. As medical drones descended to attend to the Craxian, Kai turned and strode toward the fighter's exit. His body ached muscles, protesting each step. The environmental controls in the Hellsand pit were calibrated to create the most uncomfortable conditions for all combatants, a feature that added to the entertainment value. For humans, that meant scorching heat and air, thick with particulates that scratched at the lungs. "You're bleeding," a voice noted as Kai entered the preparation chamber. Kang, his assigned handler, gestured toward a gash on Kai's forearm. The older man's face remained expressionless, but there was something like concern in his eyes. As far as handlers went, Kang was decent a rarity in a place like Shinnok's. "It's nothing," Kai muttered, reaching for a tube of sealant from the medical kit on the wall. The synthetic skin would hold until he could get proper treatment. "Where's Grix? I want my payment." "The pitmaster will see you shortly," Kang replied, his gaze flickering to the security cameras mounted in each corner of the room. "He was pleased with your performance," Kai snorted. "I don't care about his pleasure. I care about the 30,000 credits he owes me. With those credits, he could purchase Elise's mining contract from Hegemony Corporation." 3 years ago, when their transport ship had been intercepted near the Cygnus system, they'd been separated. Kai sold to the fighting pits, Elise to the mines. For 3 years, he'd fought his way through the underground circuit, saved every credit, until he'd finally secured a contract with the prestigious Hellsand pit. 3 fights, 30,000 credits. Enough to buy Elise's freedom. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Grix entered, flanked by 2 Talrian security guards. The pitmaster was a Luxorian, his blue-gray skin gleaming with expensive oils, ornate metal pieces, woven into the tentacle-like appendages that framed his face. His wide mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. "The Terran Warrior, 3 victories as promised." Grix's modulated voice carried an artificial warmth. "You've earned quite a following. The viewing numbers for your matches have increased 23% since your debut." "I don't care about viewers," Kai said flatly. "I care about my payment." Grix's smile didn't falter. Of course. Business-minded. I respect that." He gestured to one of the guards who stepped forward with a datapad. "Your contract as agreed. 3 victories in consecutive matches. Payment to be rendered immediately upon completion." Kai took the datapad, scanning the terms. Everything appeared in order. He pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner, confirming the transaction. "Excellent," Grix said, taking back the datapad. "Your prize will be delivered momentarily." Something in the pitmaster's tone made Kai's instincts flare. "I want the credits transferred to my account, now." Grix's expression shifted, the smile becoming strained. "There appears to be a misunderstanding. Your contract specified a prize of equivalent value to 30,000 credits, not the credits themselves." Kai's heart sank. "What?" "It's all there in the fine print, my dear Terran. Section 12, paragraph 6. Grix made a dismissive gesture. The Hell Sandpit reserves the right to provide compensation in the form of goods services or other valuable assets, equivalent to the agreed-upon sum. Rage boiled up inside Kai. He lunged forward only to find himself restrained by the Talrian guards, their massive forms immovable as mountain ranges. "You lying piece of—" "Language Terran." Grix tutted. "Violence outside the arena violates your contract and would result in immediate forfeit of all compensation." Kai struggled against the guard's grip. "I need those credits, my sister—" "We'll have to wait, I'm afraid." Grix nodded to someone behind Kai. "Bring in the Verdante." The rear door opened, and two more guards entered, dragging between them a female figure. She was humanoid in form, though clearly not human. Her skin held a faint greenish tint, and her hair, a deep emerald color, fell in tangled waves around a face of otherworldly beauty. But it was her eyes that caught Kai's attention, a luminous amber that seemed to glow with their own inner light, now filled with defiance despite the restraints binding her wrists. "What is this?" Kai demanded. "Your prize," Grix said proudly. "A Verdante female. Extremely rare. The last one sold on the private market went for 45,000 credits. I'm being quite generous." The woman's gaze snapped to Kai, those amber eyes narrowing. She spoke, her voice musical despite the venom in her words. "I am not merchandise to be traded." "Silence," one of the guards growled, yanking on her restraints. Kai stared in disbelief. "I don't want a slave, I need credits." "Then sell her," Grix suggested with a shrug. "Though I'd recommend waiting a few weeks. The market for exotic specimens fluctuates, and currently there's a glut due to the recent raids in the Verdante system." The woman tensed at the mention of her home system, something flashing in her eyes that went beyond anger, a profound sorrow that made Kai pause. "This isn't what we agreed to," he insisted, turning back to Grix. "It is exactly what we agreed to, Terran. Read your contract more carefully next time." Grix nodded to the guards. "Transfer custody of the Verdante to him. His problem now." The guards shoved the woman forward. She stumbled, nearly falling, before Kai instinctively reached out to steady her. Up close, he could see faint patterns on her skin, subtle geometric markings that seemed to shimmer in the harsh lighting. "I don't accept this," Kai said, though he didn't release the woman's arm. Grix was already heading for the door. "The transaction is complete. The arena medics will remove her restraints. I suggest you keep her contained. Verdante are known for their willfulness." He paused at the threshold. "Oh, and Kai, consider my offer to renew your contract. 5 more fights, and perhaps next time you'll be more specific about your desired compensation." The door slid shut behind the pitmaster and his guards, leaving Kai alone with Kang and the Verdante woman. "This is a problem," Kang said quietly. Kai released the woman's arm, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "I need credits, not complications." "I am not a complication," the woman said coldly. "I am Zia of House Tyrell, and you will release me immediately." Kai barked a bitter laugh. "Release you to go where we're on a space station in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by people who'd happily sell you to the highest bidder." Zia lifted her chin. "My people will pay handsomely for my return." "Your people are currently being systematically conquered by the hegemony," Kang interjected, his voice low. "The latest reports indicate that 3 major cities on Verdante Prime have fallen in the past month." Something like pain flashed across Zia's face before her expression hardened once more. "All the more reason I must return. I have information that could turn the tide." Kai exchanged a glance with Kang. This was getting more complicated by the second. "Look, I need 30,000 credits to buy my sister's contract. If your people can pay for your return, maybe we can help each other." Before Zia could respond, the door burst open. A squad of soldiers in the unmistakable gray-black armor of Hegemony Corporate Security stormed in, weapons raised. "Step away from the Verdante," the lead officer commanded. Kai instinctively moved in front of Zia. "What is this?" "By order of Hegemony Corporation, all Verdante nationals are to be detained for questioning regarding suspected terrorist activities." The officer stated mechanically. Interference will result in immediate arrest. Kang moved with surprising speed for his age, positioning himself near the secondary exit. Kai, he said quietly, these are not station security. These are Hegemony Special Forces. The implication was clear. This was far beyond a simple dispute over payment or ownership. Somehow Zia was important enough to warrant direct hegemony intervention. Kai made a split-second decision. "Run!" he whispered to Zia, then lunged at the nearest soldier. Chaos erupted. Kai's combat training took over as he grappled with the armored figure, using the soldier's own weight against him. Around him, stun blasts illuminated the room in flashes of blue light. He caught glimpses of Kang deflecting a soldier's aim of Zia, ducking beneath another's grasp, despite her bound wrists. "This way!" Kang shouted, slamming his palm against a panel beside the secondary exit. The door slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance corridor. Kai broke free from his opponent, delivering a final blow that sent the soldier crashing into his comrades. He grabbed Zia's arm and pulled her toward the exit. Kang was already through holding the door. "Go," the older man urged. "I'll delay them." Kai began, but the handler cut him off. "Find me when this is over. Now go." Kai hesitated only a moment before pulling Zia through the doorway. Behind them, Kang slammed the control panel, and the door sealed shut. The maintenance corridor stretched before them, dimly lit by emergency strips along the floor. Distant alarms began to wail throughout the station. "We need to get these off," Kai said, gesturing to Zia's restraints. "There's no time," she replied, already moving down the corridor. "They'll have alerted all security checkpoints by now." Kai caught up to her in 2 strides. "Why are Hegemony Special Forces after you?" "Because I'm not just any Verdante," she said, her amber eyes meeting his. "I'm a member of the High Council, and I have proof of what they're really doing in the mines of Cygnus 4. She paused, her expression softening slightly. "Including what they're doing to the human workers there." Kai's heart clenched. "Elise, if your sister is there, then her fate is tied to mine and to the fate of both our peoples." Zia's voice hardened with resolve. "Help me escape, and I promise I will help you save her." The sound of boots echoed from somewhere behind them. Kai made his decision. "This way," he said, taking the lead. "We need to get to the lower levels. If we can reach the station's undercity, we might find someone who can help us." Together, they plunged deeper into the labyrinthine passages of Shinnok Station, Hunted Quarry, in a game where the stakes had suddenly become far greater than 30,000 credits. The undercity of Shinnok Station sprawled beneath the gleaming commerce levels, and fighting arenas a warren of makeshift dwellings and illegal businesses that had evolved in the station's forgotten maintenance sections. Here, the station's environmental systems struggled to maintain even basic life support, resulting in pockets of oppressive heat, alternating with zones of bone-chilling cold. Steam hissed from ancient pipes, creating an ever-present fog that limited visibility and added to the claustrophobic atmosphere. Kai led Zia through narrow passages, their progress slowed by the need to avoid both hegemony patrols and the undercity's less savory inhabitants. He'd been here before during his first months on the station, before he'd secured legitimate fighting contracts. The place hadn't improved. "We need to find someone who can remove these," Zia said, lifting her bound wrists. The restraints were sophisticated neural dampeners designed specifically for Verdante physiology, suppressing whatever abilities her species possessed. "I know someone," Kai replied, though "know" was perhaps too strong a term. He'd had dealings with Lydia, the Duchess, Morgan, exactly once when he'd needed false identification to enter the fighting circuit. She ruled the Undercity's black market with an iron grip and had a particular disdain for Hegemony Corporation, a disdain that might work in their favor. They turned down a corridor illuminated by the pulsing glow of red emergency lights, the walls covered in a patchwork of graffiti and makeshift wiring. Ahead, a cluster of individuals huddled around a chemical heat source, their features obscured by ragged clothing. Keep your head down, Kai murmured. Don't make eye contact. As they approached the group, one figure taller than the rest stepped into their path. A Cerulean, judging by the four glowing eyes that peered from beneath a tattered hood. Passage fee. The Cerulean rasped a vibroblade humming to life in his lower right hand. Kai tensed, calculating their odds. The group numbered 6, and while he could handle himself in a fight, he doubted Zia could contribute much with her wrists bound. We're expected by the Duchess, Kai said, gambling on the Cerulean's fear of crossing the Undercity's de facto ruler. The Cerulean's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, a new voice cut through the tense silence. And the Duchess does not appreciate others collecting tolls in her territory. From the shadows emerged a slender human woman, her silver hair cropped close to her scalp face, marked with intricate circuitry-like tattoos that pulsed with a faint blue light. Behind her stood 2 massive security drones, their weapon systems humming quietly. The Cerulean immediately lowered his blade, backing away. Apologies, Madam Duchess. We were merely providing security services. How noble, Lydia replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. She gestured, and the group scattered like insects exposed to sudden light. Turning her attention to Kai and Zia, she arched an eyebrow. A Helson fighter and a bound Verdante. This promises to be an interesting story. Her gaze lingered on Zia's restraints. Neural dampeners. Expensive. Someone wants to keep your talents firmly in check, my dear. Can you remove them? Kai asked. Lydia's smile was predatory. I can remove anything for the right price, though I'm curious why I should help a fighter who works for the very establishment that regularly tries to shut down my operations. Because Hegemony Special Forces are involved, Kai said bluntly, and I know how you feel about them. Something darkened in Lydia's expression. Follow me, she said after a moment's consideration. And keep up. The station's on high alert and my security net won't mask your presence for long. They followed her through a maze of corridors until they reached a section that bore signs of recent modification. The walls here were lined with advanced technology that seemed out of place in the squalor of the Undercity security systems and data terminals that would have looked more at home in a corporate headquarters. Lydia led them into what appeared to be a converted storage bay, now serving as a combination of living quarters and command center. Holographic displays flickered around the perimeter, showing various sections of the station. In one corner, a surgical station stood ready, equipped with tools both medical and decidedly not. Sit, Lydia instructed Zia, pointing to a chair near the surgical equipment. To Kai, she said, Now tell me why Hegemony Special Forces are hunting you. The truth, mind you. My sensors detect lying with remarkable accuracy. Kai hesitated, glancing at Zia. The Verdante nodded slightly. She's a member of the Verdante High Council, Kai explained. She has information about Hegemony operations on Cygnus 4 operations that involve my sister, who's being held there as a mining laborer. A counselor, Lydia, looked at Zia with new interest. The war between your people and Hegemony has been good for business, but bad for stability. And I prefer stability for my long-term investments. She approached Zia, examining the restraints more closely. These are military grade. What exactly can you do that requires such precautions? Zia met her gaze steadily. Remove these and perhaps I'll show you. Lydia laughed, a surprisingly warm sound in the sterile environment. I like you. Dangerous but direct. She reached for a tool from the surgical station. This will hurt, but I assume you'd prefer pain to captivity. As Lydia worked on the restraints, Kai moved to one of the holographic displays, watching the security feeds. How widespread is the search? They've locked down all official transit hubs, Lydia replied, not looking up from her work. Fortunately, I maintain several unofficial ones. For a price, of course. I have nothing to pay you with, Kai admitted. I was supposed to receive 30,000 credits today. Instead, I got her. He nodded toward Zia. An interesting exchange, Lydia mused. though potentially more valuable depending on what our Verdante friend knows. The first restraint fell away with a soft click. There's one. Now for the other. As the second restraint dropped to the floor, Zia inhaled sharply. Her amber eyes seemed to glow brighter, and the geometric patterns on her skin pulsed with a subtle luminescence. "That's better," she said, flexing her fingers. She turned to Lydia. "You asked what I can do. Every Verdante has a connection to what you might call the biological matrix, the underlying patterns of life itself. Some can heal. Others can enhance growth." Her eyes locked with Kai's. "I can perceive and manipulate genetic coding, which is why Hegemony wants me. They're conducting experiments on Cygnus 4 attempting to create biological weapons by altering the genetic structure of various species, including humans." Kai felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath him. "Elise," he whispered. "Your sister may have been selected for their program," Zia confirmed gravely. "The humans they choose tend to have certain genetic markers that make them particularly suitable for the modifications they're attempting." "What modifications?" Lydia asked, her professional curiosity evident. "They're trying to create super soldiers with enhanced reflexes, strength, and healing abilities," Zia explained. "But the process is flawed. Most subjects die. Those who survive often develop severe psychological instabilities or physical mutations that render them unsuitable for combat." Kai clenched his fists. "We need to get to Cygnus 4 now." "That won't be easy," Lydia said, moving to a central console. "Cygnus 4 is a secure mining facility with military-grade defenses, and with the escalation of the conflict between Verdante and Hegemony, security will be even tighter." "But not impossible," Zia insisted, "especially with what I know about their systems." Lydia studied them both for a long moment. "I might be able to help you. But first, I want access to Hegemony's secure databases. Their operations have been causing me significant inconvenience. If you can get me that access, I'll provide transportation to Cygnus 4. "Deal," Kai said immediately. "Not so fast," Lydia cautioned. "The only way to access those databases from this station is through the central data hub in the administrative level. Breaking in won't be simple, and getting out will be even harder." "We can do it," Kai insisted. "We'll need a distraction," Zia said thoughtfully. "Something to draw security away from the data hub." A slow smile spread across Lydia's face. "As it happens, I have just the thing. How do you feel about causing a small riot?" 3 hours later, Kai found himself dressed in station maintenance coveralls, pushing a cleaning drone through the polished corridors of Shinox's administrative level. Beside him, Zia wore similar attire, her distinctive green hair concealed beneath a technician's cap. The disguises were simple, but effective maintenance workers were virtually invisible to the station's elite. "The data hub is 2 levels up," Lydia's voice crackled through the communication implant in Kai's ear. "Security is heavier than usual. Looks like they've added extra patrols due to your little escapade earlier." "How long until your distraction?" Kai murmured, pretending to adjust the cleaning drone settings. "To -7 minutes, Lydia replied. "Be ready to move the instant it starts. You'll have approximately 12 minutes before they realize it's a diversion." They continued their steady progress, passing through security checkpoints, with the forged credentials Lydia had provided. At each checkpoint, Kai felt his pulse quicken, certain they would be discovered. But the guards barely glanced at them, their attention focused on more obvious threats. As they approached the final security checkpoint before the data hub level, Zia suddenly gripped Kai's arm. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "The guard at the scanner, he's receiving new orders." Kai casually glanced toward the checkpoint. The security officer was indeed speaking into his communicator, his expression shifting from boredom to alert attention. Lydia, Kai subvocalized. "We might be compromised." "Hold position," came the terse reply. "Initiating distraction now." Moments later, the station's emergency sirens blared to life. Red warning lights pulsed along the corridors as the station's automated announcement system activated. "Attention all personnel. Environmental hazard detected in commercial sectors, 12 through 17. Emergency protocols activated. All security personnel proceed to designated emergency stations. Chaos erupted as civilians began rushing toward evacuation points. The security officer at the checkpoint hesitated, torn between his new orders and the emergency protocols. "Now," Kai muttered, pushing the cleaning drone forward with renewed purpose. They approached the checkpoint as the guard was distracted by his communicator. "Maintenance access required for Level 42 environmental systems," Kai stated, adopting an annoyed tone. "We've got critical failure warnings in the atmospheric processors." The guard frowned. "I have orders to lock down this checkpoint." "Fine," Kai shrugged. "When the oxygen levels drop and the administrators start suffocating you, can explain why you blocked the repair team." He began to turn the drone around. "Come on, Zia. We'll log the denial of access and let command handle it." It was a gamble, playing on the guard's fear of being blamed for a worsening emergency. After a moment's hesitation, the guard stepped aside. "Make it quick," he growled, "and stay away from the secure sections." They passed through the checkpoint, maintaining their unhurried pace until they turned a corner and were out of sight. "That was close," Zia breathed. "We're not there yet," Kai reminded her, checking the station schematic Lydia had uploaded to his communicator. "Data hub is 3 corridors down, then 2 levels up via the maintenance shaft." They abandoned the cleaning drone in an unused office, then made their way to the maintenance access point. The shaft was narrow, designed for service drones rather than human workers, but it was their only option to avoid the remaining security checkpoints. Climbing the ladder within the shaft, they emerged on Level 42, the heart of Shinox's administrative operations. Unlike the lower levels with their garish advertisements and bustling crowds, this area was sterile and quiet, all smooth surfaces and subdued lighting. "The hub should be directly ahead," Kai whispered, consulting the schematic again. According to Lydia's intel, it's secured with both biometric scanners and an AI security system. "The biometrics I can handle," Zia said, her confidence surprising Kai. Verdante genetic manipulation works on more than just living tissue. They approached the sealed entrance to the data hub. A sleek security panel glowed beside the door, waiting for authorized access. Lydia, Kai subvocalized. "We're at the hub entrance." "You have approximately 8 minutes before security realizes the environmental alert is a false alarm," came the response. "Make them count." Zia stepped forward, placing her hand on the security panel. She closed her eyes in concentration, and Kai watched in fascination as the geometric patterns on her skin pulsed with increased luminosity. Beneath her palm, the panel's surface seemed to ripple, as though becoming temporarily fluid. After several tense seconds, the panel chimed its acceptance, and the door slid open. "How did you do that?" Kai asked as they slipped inside. "I temporarily reconfigured the sensor to recognize my genetic pattern as authorized," Zia explained. "It won't last long and it will leave traces for their security team to find, but it got us in." The data hub was smaller than Kai had expected, a circular room dominated by a central processing pillar, surrounded by holographic workstations. The air hummed with the subtle vibration of quantum processors. "We need a direct connection," Zia said, moving to one of the workstations. Kay kept watch at the door, while Zia interfaced with the system. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls with practiced ease. "You seem to know your way around hegemony systems," he observed. "I should," she replied, without looking up. "I was part of the diplomatic delegation that negotiated our first technology-sharing agreement with them before they revealed their true intentions." Her voice hardened. "Before they began their systematic exploitation of our world and people." The workstation pulsed with data as Zia navigated through security protocols. "I'm accessing their secure network now. Lydia should be receiving the data stream." "Confirmed." Lydia's voice came through the communicator. "Data packets arriving. This is extensive. More than I expected." "What about information on Cygnus 4? Kai asked urgently. "Can you find anything about the mining operation, about the experiments?" Zia's fingers paused momentarily. Searching now. But Kai, we have another problem. According to this, Hegemony is accelerating their timetable. They're transferring all experimental subjects from Cygnus 4 to a new facility within the week. Elise could be among them, Kai realized dread settling in his stomach. Wait, Zia murmured, her focus intensifying. I've found something. Project Ascension. It appears to be their designation for the Human Genetic Modification Program. Her expression grew troubled. Kai, they're not just creating soldiers. They're attempting to unlock specific genetic sequences that they believe exist in certain human bloodlines, sequences that might allow for a level of genetic manipulation similar to Verdante abilities. Why would they need that if they're already conquering your people? Kai asked. Because Verdante abilities are linked to our world, to our specific evolutionary path, Zia explained. They can capture us, study us, but they can't fully replicate what we can do. If they could isolate the genetic potential in humans that responds to similar stimuli. She didn't need to finish the thought. Lydia, Kai subvocalized. Are you getting this? Every word, came the reply. And I've found something else. Transfer orders for a Subject EM from General Mining Duty to Project Ascension, scheduled for 3 days ago. EM Elise Mercer. Kai's heart raced. She's already in the program. We need to move faster, Zia said, her fingers flying across the interface as she downloaded critical data. I'm taking everything I can on Project Ascension and the Cygnus 4 facility. A sudden alarm blared through the room, the lighting shifting to a harsh red glow. Unauthorized access detected, an automated voice announced. Security protocols activated. Lockdown imminent. We've been discovered, Kai said, drawing the shock baton he'd concealed beneath his maintenance coveralls. How much longer? Almost done, Zia insisted, her concentration unbroken despite the alarm. Just a few more seconds. The door to the data hub slid open, revealing 2 security officers with weapons drawn. Kai didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, the shock baton crackling with energy as it connected with the first officer's chest. The man convulsed and dropped, but the second officer managed to fire a shot. The energy bolt sizzled past Kai's ear, impacting the wall behind him. Kai rolled to the side, came up beneath the officer's arm, and delivered a savage strike to the vulnerable point between helmet and body armor. The officer crumpled. More will be coming, he warned, retrieving one of the fallen officer's weapons. Zia, we need to go now. Download complete, she announced, disconnecting from the workstation. I have everything we need. They moved into the corridor, only to find it filled with acrid smoke. Emergency containment bulkheads were beginning to descend throughout the level. Lydia, Kai called through the communicator. We need an exit. Secondary maintenance shaft, 30 meters to your right, came the immediate response. It'll take you down to level 30, where I have a team waiting. But you need to hurry. Station security is implementing a complete lockdown. They ran through the thickening smoke, the sound of boots and shouted commands echoing from intersecting corridors. The maintenance access point was partially concealed behind a utility panel. Kai wrenched it open, revealing the narrow shaft beyond. You first, he told Zia, keeping the stolen weapon trained on the corridor behind them. She slipped into the shaft without argument. Kai followed, pulling the panel closed behind them, just as security forces rounded the corner. The shaft was even narrower than the first one they'd used, forcing them to descend in an awkward half-climb, half-slide that left their hands raw and their bodies bruised. They emerged into a storage area on level 30, where 3 figures in nondescript clothing waited. One stepped forward, a woman with chromed cybernetic enhancements visible along her jawline. Duchess sent us, she said without preamble. Follow, stay close. They moved through service corridors and freight tunnels, avoiding the main throughways where security would be heaviest. Twice, they were forced to hide as patrols passed, and once their guide used what appeared to be a small EMP device to temporarily disable a security drone. After what felt like hours, but was likely only 20 minutes, they reached a small docking bay hidden behind a series of cargo containers. A sleek ship waited there, not large, but obviously built for speed. The Nightshade, their guide, announced. Fastest smuggling vessel in the quadrant. It'll get you to Cygnus 4, assuming you can break through the planetary defense grid. She handed Kai a data chip. Coordinates and access codes. The Duchess says you're even now. As they boarded the vessel, Lydia's voice came through on the ship's communication system. I've uploaded the data from the hub. You'll find everything we have on Project Ascension and your sister's whereabouts. I've also included a little surprise virus that should create some interesting problems in Hegemony's network over the next few hours. Thank you, Kai said, settling into the pilot's seat. Despite years as a fighter, his original training had been as a transport pilot skills that were about to prove useful once more. Don't thank me yet, Lydia replied. Getting off the station won't be easy. They've activated the defense grid. Every security ship in the vicinity will be after you the moment you launch. Then, we'll have to be faster, Kai said, powering up the ship's systems. The engine hummed to life, a sound far more refined than the vessel's battered exterior would suggest. One more thing, Lydia added. The data you retrieved goes well beyond Project Ascension. There are indications that Hegemony's interest in human genetic markers is connected to ancient contact between humans and Verdante. Something they're calling the Convergence Protocol. It might explain why they're so interested in your sister specifically. Kai glanced at Zia, who had gone very still beside him. Is that true? There are legends among my people, she said carefully. Stories of a time when Verdante and humans shared knowledge before your species was confined to Earth. I always believed they were just myths. She met his gaze. But if Hegemony believes otherwise, if they think certain human bloodlines carry traces of that ancient connection, it would explain much about their recent aggression. The ship's warning system beeped, indicating that the station's security protocols had identified their unauthorized launch preparation. We'll discuss ancient history later, Kai said, gripping the controls. Right now, we need to focus on staying alive. With a surge of power, the Nightshade detached from its moorings and shot out of the docking bay. Immediately, alarm signals flooded the communication channels as Shinnok Station recognized the unauthorized departure. Unidentified vessel, you are in violation of station security protocols, came the automated warning. Return to your assigned dock immediately, or defensive measures will be deployed. Kai ignored the warning, pushing the Nightshade to maximum acceleration. The station fell away behind them, its gleaming structure diminishing against the vast backdrop of space. Defense platforms activating, Zia reported, monitoring the sensor display. Energy signatures consistent with ion cannons. Hang on, Kai warned, initiating a series of evasive maneuvers, just as the first energy bolts lanced through the space they had occupied moments before. The Nightshade responded beautifully, its handling more like a fighter craft than a smuggling vessel. Kai wove through the defensive fire, using the station's own communication arrays and external structures as cover. Security vessels launching, Zia announced, her voice tense but controlled. 3. No 4 pursuit craft. Hegemony configurations. Kai nodded grimly. We need to make the jump to hyperspace before they can establish a pursuit vector. Can you handle weapons? Zia's hands moved to the weapons console with surprising confidence. Target acquisition systems online, but we can't outfight 4 security vessels. We don't need to beat them, Kai said, executing a tight spiral to avoid another barrage from the station's defense platforms. We just need to delay them long enough to calculate our jump coordinates. The first of the pursuit vessels came into range, its weapons powering up. Zia didn't wait for them to fire first. She targeted the vessel's sensor array and fired a precise burst from the Nightshade's main guns. The shot connected, sending the pursuit craft into a temporary spin as its systems recalibrated. Nice shot, Kai commented, genuinely impressed. I wasn't always a diplomat, Zia replied, already targeting the next vessel. They danced through the defensive grid, the Nightshade taking minimal damage thanks to Kai's piloting and Zia's marksmanship. But they were still outnumbered and outgunned, and the window for escape was narrowing with each passing second. Jump calculations complete, Kai announced, as the ship's computer finished processing the route to Cygnus 4. But we need to clear the station's gravity well before we can activate the drive. A direct hit rocked the ship, warning lights flashing across the control panel. Port shield generator compromised, Zia reported. One more hit on that side and we'll lose structural integrity. Kai made a snap decision. Reroute power from life support to the engines. We can survive on emergency oxygen long enough to make the jump. Zia complied without argument, and the Nightshade surged forward with renewed speed, streaking past the last of the defense platforms. Behind them, the pursuit vessels struggled to match their velocity. We're clear of the gravity well, Zia announced. Jump drive ready. Kai's hand hovered over the activation control. Here goes nothing. The stars blurred around them as the Nightshade leapt into hyperspace, leaving Shinnok Station and its pursuers far behind. For the first time since the chaos began, Kai allowed himself to breathe. We made it, he said, slumping back in his seat. For now. Zia was already accessing the ship's medical supplies, applying a regenerative patch to a burn on her arm that Kai hadn't even noticed she'd sustained. The journey to Cygnus 4 will take approximately 10 hours through hyperspace, she said. We should use that time to study the data we retrieved and formulate a plan. Kai nodded his thoughts, returning to Elise. If she was indeed part of Project Ascension, every moment counted. He pulled up the files Lydia had transferred to the ship's systems, focusing on those related to the project. What he found turned his blood cold. Project Ascension wasn't just about creating super soldiers or replicating Verdante abilities. It was about something far more fundamental and far more disturbing. According to the research notes, hegemony scientists believed that certain human genetic sequences contained dormant potential that, when activated through specific procedures, could allow for unprecedented manipulation of biological systems. They called it genetic resonance, the ability to intuitively understand and influence living organisms at their most basic level. The procedure to activate these dormant genes, however, was brutal. Test subjects underwent a series of injections, radiation exposures, and neural stimulations designed to force the genetic material to express itself. The success rate was abysmal. Of the 27 subjects who had undergone the full procedure, 22 had died. 3 of the survivors had developed severe mutations that rendered them useless for hegemony's purposes. Only 2 had shown the desired results, and even they exhibited concerning psychological instabilities. And Elise was next in line for the procedure. "They're going to kill her," Kai whispered, his voice hoarse with horror and rage. Zia, who had been reviewing her own set of files, looked up sharply. "What did you find?" Kai showed her the reports. As she read, her expression shifted from concern to understanding, and finally to a grim determination. "This confirms what I suspected," she said. "The genetic markers they're targeting, they're not random mutations or evolutionary adaptations. They're signatures left from ancient interaction between our species." "What do you mean?" Zia hesitated, as though weighing how much to reveal. "Long before humanity achieved spaceflight, before your recorded history began, Verdante explorers visited Earth. According to our historical records, they found a promising young species with remarkable adaptive potential. There was exchange, knowledge, culture," she paused, "and in some cases genetic material." "You're saying Verdante interbred with early humans?" Kai asked, skeptical, despite everything he'd seen. "Not exactly," Zia clarified. "It was more deliberate than that, more scientific. Certain genetic sequences were introduced into specific human populations, sequences designed to remain dormant until humanity reached a particular developmental stage." Her amber eyes met his. "A failsafe of sorts. A way to ensure that when humans eventually joined the wider galactic community, they would have the tools to protect themselves. From what? From exploitation. From species like the hegemony, who view others only as resources to be consumed." Zia's voice hardened. "But Hegemony discovered these dormant sequences, and now they're trying to force their activation to claim for themselves what was meant to be humanity's inheritance. Kai struggled to process this information. It seemed fantastical, yet it aligned with the clinical data in the hegemony files. And Elise, why her specifically? According to these files, your family line carries an unusually high concentration of the relevant markers, Zia explained. You both have them, but in Elise, they're particularly pronounced. She paused, studying Kai with new intensity. Have you ever experienced moments of unusual intuition, particularly regarding living things? Plants that flourish under your care, despite impossible conditions? Wounds that heal faster than they should? Kai was about to dismiss the suggestion, but memories surfaced the garden he'd maintained as a child, where plants grew with unnatural vigor. The time he'd broken his arm in a fall, and the doctors had been amazed at how quickly the bone knit. The way he seemed to instinctively understand his opponent's movements in the fighting pit. Maybe, he admitted reluctantly. But that doesn't mean... It means you carry the potential, Zia interrupted. Just as Elise does. But while your genes have begun a natural gradual awakening, hegemony is trying to force Elise's activation all at once. The human body isn't designed to handle such rapid change. That's why their subjects die. Kai closed his eyes, fighting back the wave of despair that threatened to overwhelm him. So, even if we reach Cygnus 4 in time, even if we somehow break into a heavily guarded mining facility and find her, she might already be... No, Zia said firmly. According to the schedule in these files, the procedure isn't set to begin for another 2 days. We have time, and I might be able to help her if the process has already started. My abilities allow me to influence genetic expression. Hope flickered in Kai's chest, fragile but present. Then we need a plan. Cygnus 4 isn't just a mining facility, it's a fortress. They spent the next several hours studying the data they'd retrieved, focusing on the layout of the Cygnus 4 facility and its security protocols. The picture that emerged was not encouraging. The facility was built into the side of a mountain range with multiple security checkpoints and automated defense systems. The experimental wing, where Project Ascension was housed, lay at the heart of the complex, separated from the general mining operation by several layers of security. A direct assault would be suicide, Kai concluded, reviewing the guard rotations and weapon placements. Even with the Nightshade's capabilities, we'd be shot down before we got anywhere near the facility. Then we don't approach directly, Zia suggested. According to these shipping manifests, there's a regular transport of ore and processed materials from the facility to an orbital loading station. The transports follow a specific route through a canyon system that helps shield them from potential attacks by Verdante raiders. Kai studied the topographical maps. We could use that same canyon for cover intercept one of the transports. Better yet, Zia said, pulling up another file. Look at this. Every third day there's a transport of personnel workers whose contracts have expired or who are being transferred to other facilities. Her finger traced a line on the manifest, including transfers to and from Project Ascension. Understanding dawned. If Elise is being moved to the project, she might be on one of those transports. Exactly. And according to the schedule, the next one departs in approximately 14 hours. If we can intercept it, we might be able to get her without ever having to breach the main facility. Kai finished, renewed hope surging through him. They refined their plan as the Nightshade continued its journey through hyperspace. The ship's systems included a comprehensive suite of scanning equipment, standard for smuggling vessels that needed to identify both targets and threats, that would allow them to determine which transport contained Elise, if she was indeed being moved. As they worked, Kai found himself increasingly impressed by Zia's tactical acumen and technical knowledge. She was far from the helpless aristocrat he had initially assumed her to be. "You said you weren't always a diplomat," he remarked during a brief rest period. "What were you before?" A shadow crossed Zia's face. "I was part of what my people call the Emerald Guard elite operatives, trained in both combat and genetic science. We were tasked with protecting Verdante interests throughout the sector, particularly against corporate exploitation. Like hegemony. Among others, yes. She absently traced one of the geometric patterns on her forearm. When hegemony first approached Verdante with proposals for mining rights, I was assigned to investigate their true intentions. What I discovered: it wasn't just about resources. They were specifically interested in our abilities, in the fundamental connection between Verdante physiology and what you would call genetic engineering. And that's how you ended up on the High Council? Zia nodded. My findings led to a more cautious approach in our dealings with hegemony. I was appointed to the diplomatic corps and eventually to the council to help shape our response. Her expression hardened. But I underestimated their determination. While we debated and negotiated, they were already positioning for a full-scale invasion. By the time we realized their true intent, it was too late to prevent the initial attacks. And somehow you ended up captive on Shinnok Station, Kai prompted. I was leading a diplomatic mission to rally support from neutral systems, she explained. Our ship was ambushed. Most of my team was killed in the initial assault. I was taken prisoner, but rather than delivering me directly to hegemony authorities, my captors decided to sell me to the highest bidder. A grim smile touched her lips. They thought I was merely a high-ranking official, not a council member. Their greed worked in my favor. It gave me time to plan. Until Grix decided to use you as my payment, Kai added. Yes, though that too may have been fortunate. Had I been delivered to a private collector, my rescue would have been much more difficult to arrange. Kai raised an eyebrow. You think this was fortunate? We're both free. We have critical information about hegemony's operations, and we have a chance to save your sister, Zia pointed out. I would call that a significant improvement over our respective situations 24 hours ago. Despite everything, Kai found himself smiling. When you put it that way. The ship's alert system interrupted their conversation, signaling their approach to the Cygnus system. Kai returned to the pilot's seat, preparing to drop out of hyperspace. We'll emerge at the edge of the system, he explained, making adjustments to the navigation controls. Far enough from the major shipping lanes to avoid immediate detection, but close enough to reach Cygnus 4 before the transport departs. Zia took the co-pilot's position, activating the ship's stealth systems. According to the data, Hegemony maintains a sensor network throughout the system, but it's primarily focused on detecting larger vessels. With the Nightshade's profile, we should be able to approach undetected if we follow the asteroid field's shadow. The hyperdrive disengaged with a subtle shift in the ship's vibration, and normal space reappeared around them. The Cygnus system spread before them, a yellow star orbited by 6 planets, the 4th of which was their destination. Even at this distance, they could see the heavy traffic around Cygnus 4 mining ships, cargo vessels, and the unmistakable silhouettes of hegemony patrol cruisers. Looks like security's been increased, Kai observed, noting the patrol patterns. The war with Verdante must have them on high alert. All the more reason to intercept the transport before it reaches the main facility, Zia agreed. Let's get closer and establish a surveillance position near the canyon route. Using the asteroid field for cover, they maneuvered the Nightshade towards Cygnus 4, their approach slow and cautious to avoid triggering the sensor grid. The planet grew larger in their view screen, a dusty, rust-colored world with minimal surface water and a thin atmosphere ideal for mining operations due to its rich mineral deposits and low indigenous life. As they entered orbit, Kai activated the ship's long-range scanners, focusing on the mountain range where the mining facility was located. The canyon system appeared as a jagged scar across the landscape, winding from the facility toward a small spaceport in the adjacent valley. There, Zia pointed to a moving dot on the scanner display. Transport convoy heading along the canyon route, matching the scheduled departure time. Kai zoomed in, analyzing the convoy's composition. 3 vehicles. Lead and rear are armed escorts. Center is the prisoner transport, if the energy signature is any indication, heavily shielded. Can we scan for life signs? Zia asked. Not from this distance and not through those shields, Kai replied. We'll need to get closer. They brought the nightshade into the upper atmosphere, using the mountain's thermal signatures to mask their descent. As they approached the canyon, the ship's sensors provided more detailed information about the convoy. 15 life signs in the transport, Kai reported. Mixed species based on the variations in the readings. No way to identify individuals without a direct scan. Then we proceed with the plan, Zia said, moving to the weapon console. Disable the escorts first, then force the transport to land. Kai piloted the ship into the canyon, using its twisting path to approach the convoy from behind. The Nightshade's engines were remarkably quiet, another smuggler's modification that now served them well. They closed the distance rapidly, the convoy unaware of their presence. In range, Zia announced. Targeting systems locked on the rear escort. Fire, Kai ordered. The Nightshade's weapons unleashed a precise barrage, striking the rear escort's propulsion systems. The vehicle lurched, its anti-grav units failing, as it settled heavily onto the canyon floor. Before the lead escort could react, Zia had already redirected their fire, disabling its communication array and weapons. Transport is increasing speed, Kai noted, attempting to outrun us. Not today, Zia murmured, targeting the transport's engine housing. Her shot was perfect, disabling the vehicle without threatening the passenger compartment. The transport veered sideways before coming to a stop against the canyon wall. Kai brought the Nightshade down a short distance away, its landing struts kicking up dust as they touched down. Security forces from the facility will respond quickly. We need to move. They armed themselves with weapons from the ship's locker, Kai choosing a compact energy rifle, Zia, a pair of precision pistols. As they approached the disabled transport, they could see the lead escort vehicle, attempting to double back its damaged systems, limiting its speed and maneuverability. I'll handle the escort, Zia said. You secure the transport. Kai nodded, breaking into a run, as Zia took position behind an outcropping of rock. The transport's main door remained sealed, but emergency protocols would have unlocked the secondary exits. He circled to the vehicle's far side, where a small access hatch had indeed popped open. Inside, confusion reigned. Guards attempted to restore order among the prisoners, a mix of miners whose contracts had expired, and based on their restraints, individuals bound for more secure facilities. Kai identified 4 guards, all armed but disoriented from the sudden stop. He didn't hesitate. Using the butt of his rifle, he struck the nearest guard at the base of the skull, dropping him instantly. The other guards turned at the commotion, but Kai was already moving, firing a stun blast that caught a second guard in the chest. The third managed to draw his weapon, but Kai closed the distance before he could aim, delivering a brutal strike to the man's throat, followed by a knee to the solar plexus. The fourth guard, a woman with captain's insignia, proved more challenging. She evaded Kai's initial attack and countered with a shock baton that nearly connected with his ribs. Kai twisted away, using his rifle to block her follow-up strike. The baton's electrical discharge fried the rifle's circuits, rendering it useless. Dropping the weapon, Kai feinted left, then drove forward with a right hook that the captain partially deflected. She was good, professionally trained, not just a security grunt. They exchanged a flurry of blows in the confined space, the prisoners pressing themselves against the walls to avoid the conflict. The captain caught Kai with a solid hit to the jaw that sent him staggering back. She pressed her advantage, the shock baton humming as she thrust it toward his midsection. But Kai had been fighting for his life in the Helsin pit for years. He sidestepped at the last moment, caught her wrist, and used her own momentum to slam her against the transport's wall. Before she could recover, he delivered a precise strike to a pressure point at the base of her neck. She slumped unconscious. Breathing heavily, Kai turned to the prisoners. I'm looking for Elise Mercer, human female, early 20s. The prisoners exchanged glances, uncertainty and fear evident in their expressions. Then one, a gaunt human man with the pallor of someone who had spent too long in the mines, spoke up. They took her yesterday. Special transport to the research wing. His voice was rough from the dust of the mines. Heard the guards talking about Project Ascension. Kai's heart sank. Are you sure? The man nodded. She was in my work detail. Good kid. Tough. She didn't want to go with them, but they drugged her when she resisted. A series of energy blasts from outside the transport indicated that Zia was engaging the guards from the lead escort. Kai knew their window was narrowing. "All of you, you're free to go," he announced to the prisoners. "Take the guards' weapons if you want them. Head into the canyon, away from the facility." He focused on the man who had spoken. "What's your name?" "Marquez." "Marquez, we have a ship." Kai gestured in the Nightshade's direction. "Not large, but it can get you off-world. Spread the word to the others." The man's eyes widened. "You serious?" "Completely. But we need to move fast. Security reinforcements will be here soon." As the prisoners began to disembark, Kai made his way back outside. Zia had efficiently neutralized the guards from the lead escort and was already jogging toward him. "Elise isn't here," he said before she could ask. "They moved her to the research wing yesterday. She's already in Project Ascension." Zia's expression remained determined. "Then we go to the facility. We still have the element of surprise, and now we have a clearer target." "It's heavily defended," Kai reminded her. "We'll need—" He was interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles, the security response from the mining facility. At least 3 patrol skimmers, based on the engine signatures. "Back to the ship," Zia urged. "We'll find another way." They ran for the Nightshade, the freed prisoners, already filing up the boarding ramp. Marquez had taken charge, organizing the evacuation with surprising efficiency. "How many can your ship hold?" he asked, as Kai and Zia reached the vessel. "Not all of you," Kai admitted. "Maybe half." Marquez nodded grimly. "We'll sort it out. Women and the injured first." As they boarded, Kai moved directly to the pilot station, powering up the engines. "We need a new plan," he said to Zia, who had taken the co-pilot seat. "A direct assault on the facility is suicide, but we can't leave Elise there." "We don't have to assault the entire facility," Zia said thoughtfully. "According to the files we retrieved, Project Ascension is housed in a separate research wing, with its own security protocols. If we can access the facility's internal systems, we might be able to create a distraction that would draw security away from that area." The Nightshade lifted off as the security skimmers rounded the canyon bend. Kai pushed the engines to maximum, and the ship shot upward, breaking free of the canyon walls, just as energy blasts from the skimmers' weapons scorched the ground where they had been moments before. "They'll alert orbital security," Kai noted, as they climbed through the atmosphere. "We won't get another chance to approach the planet undetected." "Then we need to move now," Zia insisted. "While they're still scrambling to respond. Use the freed prisoners as a diversion. Have them claim the ship was destroyed, after dropping them off." Kai adjusted their course, bringing the Nightshade around in a sweeping arc that would take them toward the mining facility from an unexpected angle. "That buys us minutes at best. We still need a way into the research wing." "There," Zia pointed to a small structure several kilometers from the main facility. "According to the schematics, that's an auxiliary power station for the facility's defense grid. If we can disable it, they'll have to reroute power from non-essential systems," Kai finished, "including potentially some of the research wing's security measures." They brought the Nightshade down behind a ridge near the power station, out of direct line of sight from the main facility. The freed prisoners disembarked quickly, Marquez the last to leave. "Good luck," he said to Kai. "If you find Elise, tell her Madrid Company remembers what she did for us during the collapse in Sector 7. Kai nodded, not knowing the reference but understanding the sentiment. "Stay safe. Head for the foothills. There are settlements of independent miners who might help you." As soon as the prisoners were clear, Kai and Zia made their move. The power station was minimally guarded, 2 sentries who were easily neutralized with stun blasts from their position on the ridge. They approached cautiously, aware that automated systems might still pose a threat. The station's exterior door required a security code, but Zia's genetic manipulation ability made short work of the biometric scanner. Inside, they found a compact control room, humming with the sound of power regulators and cooling systems. "The main distribution node should be here," Zia said, moving to a central console. If we overload it, the surge should disable the primary grid without triggering the emergency backup instantly. How long will it take? Kai asked, keeping watch at the door. A few minutes to bypass the failsafes. Then, we'll have approximately 20 seconds to clear the blast radius before the regulators catastrophically fail. Kai grimaced. That's cutting it close. We've had worse odds, Zia reminded him, her fingers already dancing across the console's interface. As she worked, Kai caught movement on the ridge they had just descended security forces, following the trail left by the freed prisoners. We've got company, he warned. Probably a standard search pattern. They haven't spotted the ship yet. Almost done, Zia murmured. Just need to lock the override command. The console emitted a series of warning tones as power levels began to climb beyond safe parameters. Red warning lights flashed throughout the control room. Time to go, Zia announced, stepping back from the console. We have maybe 15 seconds. They sprinted from the power station, keeping low, to avoid being spotted by the search party on the ridge. They had covered perhaps half the distance to the nightshade when the station erupted in a spectacular explosion, sending debris and a shockwave racing outward. The blast caught them at the edge of its radius, the concussive force throwing them to the ground. Kai felt the air driven from his lungs as he tumbled across the rocky terrain. When he regained his bearings, he saw Zia already pushing herself up a trickle of green-tinged blood, running from a cut on her forehead. You okay? He gasped, struggling to his feet. She nodded. We need to move. The explosion will draw every security unit in the area. They reached the nightshade just as alarms began blaring from the direction of the mining facility. In the distance, emergency lights pulsed as sections of the complex lost power. Kai brought the ship's engines online, while Zia monitored the facility's response through the sensors. It worked, she reported. Power fluctuations throughout the complex. They're diverting resources to maintain the primary defensive systems, but several secondary systems are offline, including... She paused, studying the readings more carefully. Including the security locks in Research Wing B. That's where Project Ascension is housed. Then that's where we're going, Kai said, lifting the ship off the ground. Hold on. He pushed the nightshade to its limits, skimming just above the surface to avoid the facility's air defense systems. They approached from the blind spot created by the power disruption, aiming for a maintenance dock near the research wing that, according to their information, should now be operating on minimal security. The dock's automated defenses were indeed offline, allowing them to land without challenge. But they had only minutes before emergency protocols would restore at least basic functionality to the compromised systems. There should be an access tunnel connecting this dock to the main research corridor, Zia said, as they disembarked weapons ready. According to the schematics, Project Ascension is located in Laboratory Complex 5, 2 levels down. They entered the facility through an emergency hatch that had defaulted to open when the security systems failed. Inside, the corridors were bathed in the red glow of emergency lighting, the air filled with the sound of alarms and automated announcements directing personnel to secure locations. Their progress was swift, encountering only minimal resistance from confused security personnel who were more focused on responding to the power station explosion than guarding against internal threats. Those they did encounter were quickly neutralized with stun blasts. They reached the central research corridor to find it in chaos. Scientists and technicians rushed to secure sensitive experiments and data, while security teams attempted to establish a perimeter around critical areas. Using the confusion to their advantage, Kai and Zia made their way to a service elevator that would take them to the lower levels where Laboratory Complex 5 was located. The elevator's primary power was offline, but the emergency manual control allowed them to descend slowly. As they reached the lower level, the facility's systems began to recover from the disruption. Lights flickered back to full brightness, and security doors that had been inoperative began to cycle through their reactivation protocols. We're running out of time, Kai muttered as they exited the elevator. Which way to Complex 5? Zia oriented herself using the schematic they had memorized. East corridor, then second junction north. It should be marked. They moved swiftly, but cautiously aware that security would be tightening with each passing moment. The corridor was eerily quiet compared to the chaos above, suggesting that this area had been evacuated due to the power disruption. They found Laboratory Complex 5 exactly where expected its entrance, marked by a heavy security door that was in the process of reactivating. Zia immediately placed her hand on the adjacent control panel, her skin patterns glowing as she interfaced with the system. "Hurry!" Kai urged, watching the corridor behind them. "Almost got it," Zia said as the door's locking mechanism disengaged with a soft click. "We have perhaps 2 minutes before the backup security protocols engage." They entered the laboratory to find it deserted, the staff evidently evacuated during the power disruption. The space was clinical and sterile, dominated by advanced medical equipment and monitoring stations. On the far side, a series of transparent chambers contained medical beds, each equipped with an array of devices that Kai couldn't identify, but instinctively recognized as menacing. Most of the chambers were empty, but in the third one, a figure lay motionless on the bed connected to multiple monitoring systems. Even from a distance, Kai recognized his sister. "Elise," he breathed, rushing forward. She appeared unconscious, her skin unnaturally pale. Intravenous lines fed liquids of various colors into her veins, while a neural interface crown encircled her headlights, pulsing in patterns that matched the readouts on the adjacent monitors. "They've already begun the procedure," Zia observed grimly, examining the equipment. "Phase 1 of genetic activation. They're using a synthetic compound derived from verdante cellular material to stimulate the dormant sequences." "Can we stop it? Can we reverse it?" Kai asked, his voice tight with fear and rage. Zia studied the monitoring equipment, her expression concentrated. "Not reverse it, no. The activation cascade has already been initiated. But I might be able to stabilize it, guide the process to prevent the catastrophic failure that kills most subjects." "Do it," Kai said without hesitation. "Tell me what you need." "Time and access to the control systems," Zia replied, moving to the primary console. "Keep watch. If anyone comes through that door, they don't leave again," Kai promised, taking position near the entrance with his weapon ready. Zia worked rapidly, her hands moving across the interface with practiced precision. The geometric patterns on her skin glowed with increasing intensity as she channeled her abilities, manipulating both the electronic systems and somehow the biological processes occurring within Elise's body. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the soft beeping of monitoring equipment and the distant sound of alarms. Then, a new sound joined the cacophony: boots in the corridor outside, approaching rapidly. "We've got company," Kai warned. "How much longer?" "I need at least another 2 minutes," Zia replied, her concentration unbroken. "The process is at a critical juncture. If I stop now, the shock could kill her." The footsteps drew closer. Kai positioned himself beside the door, weapon raised. When it slid open, he was ready. The first security officer received a stun blast directly to the chest before he could fully enter the laboratory. The second managed to fire a wild shot that scorched the wall near Kai's head before a second stun blast dropped him. But the third and fourth were more prepared, taking cover on either side of the doorway and returning fire. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as Kai ducked behind the equipment cabinet. The exchange of fire was brief, but intense, neither side able to gain a decisive advantage due to the confined space and limited angles of attack. "Zia," Kai called over the sound of weapons fire. "Status." "Almost there," she replied, her voice strained. "The genetic cascade is stabilizing. I've managed to guide the activation along paths that her body can handle, but we need to disconnect her from their equipment carefully, or the shock could undo everything." Kai needed to buy more time. Grabbing a canister of some unknown substance from a nearby shelf, he rolled it toward the doorway. When one of the security officers fired at it, the canister ruptured, releasing a cloud of dense, acrid smoke. Using the distraction, Kai fired a series of precise shots that forced the officers to retreat temporarily. "Now, Zia," he urged, "we won't get another chance." With a final series of commands, Zia completed her work on the console. The monitoring equipment's frantic beeping settled into a more stable rhythm, and some of the color began to return to Elisa's cheeks. "Help me disconnect her," Zia instructed, moving to the transparent chamber. "The intravenous lines first, then the neural interface."